Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first training session for the year. I know it's probably a little chilly where everybody is, but I think we've got nice, nice deck to go through today. We'll be joined by Patrick from our training team, as well as Ed from our product team, to cover evaporative emissions and really specifically what's new and what's evolving in the category. So the first thing I'd like to talk about today is our training schedule for 2026. They'll all follow a format similar to what we're going to go through today. We're going to give you a little bit of information on how some of these specific systems work, talk about what fails, why it fails, offer some tips, some technical advice that you could offer to your technician customers, as well as some related item selling tips. We'll also go over the sales support materials that we've created that are available to you. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code, and that will bring you up to the training schedule for the remainder of 2026, and you can register for the classes as you see fit. So getting into EVAP, it's a growing category. It is now the fifth most common reason a check engine light is triggered. A few years back, it was the seventh most common reason. So this is trending upwards. We don't have data yet for 2025, but if we did, I would bet that it's probably number 4 or even number 3 now, based on some of the things that we're going to go through on the next slide. So a large part of this is being driven by some major legislative things that happened down here in the U.S. about 11, 12 years ago. The EPA said to new vehicle manufacturers that you need to change your EVAP systems, you need to improve them, and we're going to make it tighter. Full compliance has to be done by 2025, and you need to start rolling this into your products as early as 2017. And the EPA said two different things, really, that the car makers had to do. One was that they were forced to improve the leak detection systems on their vehicle. So they need to get more sophisticated. They need to be more accurate. The second thing that they did is they lowered the allowance of hydrocarbons that the vehicle can emit before the check engine light came on. And what that allowance was actually cut in half. So where vehicles used to emit a small amount of hydrocarbons, a 2014 vehicle, it would still be okay. Check engine light wouldn't come on. Same amount of hydrocarbons being emitted on a 2020 or a 2022, that's going to throw a check engine light. So because of this legislation, this category is going to continue to see strong and sustained growth in the coming years. It also, the quality, the precision, the manufacturing of the components matter more now than they ever did before, because these systems are so much more sophisticated and so much more accurate. There's no such thing now as using a part that's good enough or close enough, because if it doesn't fit perfectly and seal perfectly, the check board integrate with the other parts of the system perfectly, check engine light's going to come on. The other thing that we're already starting to see is that a wider range of components are starting to sell. Specifically, we see this in the amount of hoses. 5 years ago, we didn't sell a lot of hoses that were part of the EVAP system. They've always been there, right? They have to connect this system. But now we're starting to see them more and more as leaks are caused, in the hoses and around the fittings. So today we're going to dive in a little bit into how the system works. Patrick's going to give you a good overview. He's also going to go into some detail about the different types of leak detection systems that new vehicle manufacturers are using. He'll talk about how and why components fail. He's going to offer some tech tips, some really good stuff that you can offer to your service provider customers as you're out making the rounds, visiting them, or speaking with them on the phone. Ed's going to go over some specific design improvements that we do to address some OE weak points. so that we can offer parts with improved durability. He's also going to give you a nice overview of the competitive landscape that exists within different manufacturers and different brands selling evaporative emission components. And then at the end, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of the sales support materials that are available to you to help you in the field. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick from training.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate that. So there are basically two main functions of the EVAP system: fuel vapor storage and the removal of vapors. As we can see in the animation on the slide, the path that the fuel vapors or hydrocarbons take once they found their way into the EVAP system are represented by the yellow dot. So let's say you pull up to the pump and your fuel gauge is running on empty. It's pretty safe to say that your fuel tank is full of fuel vapors. In older vehicles, we filled up the tank, or when we filled up the tank, the fuel vapors in the tank would simply exit through the filler neck and give you a really good, strong whiff of gas as they hit you in the face. With EVAP emission systems, those same vapors don't escape into the atmosphere while at the pump. The vapors are part of a contained system, and they flow into the vapor canister from the fuel tank. As we can see again in the animation with the yellow line going from the fuel tank to the canister. How this works is the vapor canister is full of activated charcoal that adsorbs. Now that's with a D, as in dog. And so as it adsorbs the fuel vapors, what's really happening is that the charcoal those fuel vapors are temporarily hanging on to the surface area of the charcoal. And that's just a temporary thing. The charcoal does not absorb or internalize those vapors. With the charcoal absorbing the vapors, these hydrocarbons, the vapors are really easy to wick away from the charcoal and be pushed through the system by the introduction of fresh air. When the canister is full of those hydrocarbons and ready to be emptied of its fuel vapor, and the vehicle is at a steady cruising speed or possibly under acceleration, both the fresh air vent valve and the purge valve open. Now we have to remember that before the purge valve opens, the engine is pulling a vacuum on the other side of that purge valve while it's closed. So when the purge valve does open, fresh air rushes through the vent valve, the fresh air vent valve that we see at the bottom of the animation in the form of those moving blue dots. And then this fresh air enters into the canister, mixes with the fuel vapors, and pushes those stored fuel vapors out of the canister, through the purge valve, and into the intake manifold. Then the vapors are drawn into the engine cylinder, where they'll be mixed with fuel and combusted. So all of this is done so that we don't release that extra fuel vapor into the atmosphere, while also being able to recycle that flammable fuel vapor back into the combustion chamber of the vehicle. And overseeing the system operation is the fuel tank pressure sensor that sits on top of the fuel tank. It's constantly looking for leaks in the system by checking system pressure and then reporting back to the control module. And in accordance with the federal mandate, manufacturers must now have that EVAP leak detection system that actively tests the system for leaks. So earlier when Aaron spoke about the new EVAP regulations being implemented by the EPA, he made it understandable that those regulations are new, obviously, to the industry, but they also come with a lot of latitude. So there are clear and concise regulations, but the latitude with which manufacturers have now to develop and improve their leak detection systems are pretty broad. Just as long as they are able to lower the number of hydrocarbons released in the atmosphere before the check engine light turns on, that's really the main focus. So there is quite a bit of latitude. This is where we get that huge variety of leak detection systems that we see in cars today. And we'll go over a few of those designs, or the designs you'll see in today's vehicles right now. As you can see on the screen, we've got the first one, which is the eSIM It's for an evaporative system integrity monitor, which is something you'll primarily see with Chryslers. The eSIM actually attaches directly to the EVAP canister and uses weights and a diaphragm to mechanically monitor and test the evap system is sealed. Again, just as an aside, these eSIMs are typically a relatively high volume item. Number 2 on this list, a lot of European manufacturers use mechanical leak detection pumps, which use a vacuum, which is also controlled by an electronic pump that pressurizes the system under certain conditions to verify that it's sealed and not leaking. Then these last 2 types of detection systems either rely on an electric pump to create positive pressure in the system to check for leaks, or an electric vacuum to create suction to check for any leaks. And really, it's all about creating pressure to check for these leaks. Where the pressure pump forces pressure in the system to check for leaks, the electric vacuum uses engine vacuum or a natural cooling induced vacuum, which is basically just from fuel cooling over time to create negative pressure for those leak checks. If you happen to have a car that uses an electric leak detection system, like many Toyotas, Fords, GMs, you'll notice that many times you'll be walking up to the car in a garage or at night, and it's possibly making noises. It's very likely that it's just the electronic pump running an emission self-test after the vehicle's been turned off for a couple of hours and is cooled down a bit. So when it comes to EVAP components, one of the big questions is how do they fail? Typically, the main culprits are just going to be wear and tear caused by time and road conditions. This wearing of the system may lead to leaks, stuck or broken valves, cracked lines, and possibly even electrical issues. However, it's important to remember where these systems are located. They're typically found on the bottom of the vehicle. So when you've got brutal road conditions, potholes, debris, along with heat, vibrations, and possibly even poor OE designs, taking all those things into consideration and all those factors create a scenario about of how quickly these components may end up failing. Also, if the driver is constantly topping off the vehicle fuel tank while at the pump, they're actually creating unknowingly conditions where the charcoal in the vapor canister could become saturated with liquid fuel, and this could also prematurely or permanently damage the EVAP system. The canister is meant to store only vapors, not contain liquid fuel. Which brings me to one of our first pro tips. So pro tip number 1, when dealing with a failed purge valve, a typical response is to just replace the valve and move on with life. Many times there are underlying issues within the system that replacing only the purge valve will not solve. So in addition to replacing the purge valve, we strongly recommend replacing the vapor canister as well. It's really important to remember that a failed canister can contaminate the entire EVAP system with charcoal. So just keep that in mind. Number 2, I just wanted to highlight that once an EVAP repair has been made, it's always a best practice to run a self-test to ensure that no diagnostic trouble codes or DTCs have come back around, lighting up the check engine light on the dash again. So we want to mitigate that, the apparition of that check engine light. After an EVAP repair, pressure vacuum leak detection tests with the help of a scan tool will definitely confirm that the system is in good order and working as it should. Then our last tip is something that periodically could happen. Sometimes leaks are very small, so small that no diagnostic trouble codes actually pop up. These EVAP leaks can oftentimes be difficult to find. One of the best ways to locate small, minuscule EVAP leaks in a system is to use a smoke machine. Now, obviously, this is not something that we're going to have at the house or locally necessarily available to utilize, but it's a great problem-solving tool, best used by the professionals that diagnose potential EVAP issues. And hopefully, this overview of the EVAP system, common failure points, and some of the pro tips that we've shared will help open up some meaningful conversations and dialogue for you. With that, my time is up, and I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Ed with product development.
Thanks, Pat. Let's talk about product. When you reach for a BWD box, what you'll find inside are parts that have gone through the R&D process, precision manufacturing, parts that have been lab tested, and dynamic in-vehicle testing. Additionally, for every part, you get sales support and training resources from the BWD team. Let's dive into how we R&D our parts and the solutions we offer. The product management team continually monitors emission-related recalls and TSBs to identify opportunities where BWD might offer a solution. A great example of this involves failing purge solenoid valves on a number of late model GM vehicles, including the Enclave, Encore, and Traverse. BWD manufactures parts designed for improved durability to replace these failing OE units. Let's take a deeper dive into a couple of those. Here's one example of an OE purge solenoid valve on GM vehicles known to prematurely fail where the seal in the plunger assembly cracks. We rehauled the design of the plunger assembly so that the plunger is kept in better and more consistent alignment, which reduces excessive wear on the seal, resulting in a longer lasting part. Here's another example of a OE unit on Ford vehicles that fails because the plunger in their purge solenoid breaks down and debris from the plunger can cause it to stick open. We redesigned the plunger by removing the cookie bites around the seal and reinforcing the plunger with ribs to make it less prone to tearing. In doing so, the plunger is less prone to breaking down and effectively extends its service life within the solenoid. The EVAP system is complex and sensitive in order to meet increasingly stringent regulatory requirements. This makes the quality of EVAP parts critical to a vehicle's performance, fuel economy, and emissions. Here are 3 simple things you should look for in emissions products that you recommend to your customers and to your shops. 1, all the related parts for complete repair. Remember, these are parts that operate in a complex system, and your supplier should be able to service the entire system if needed, not just cherry pick the best sellers. 2, parts that have been lab tested and vehicle tested. Testing on bench only tests the part's static performance. Testing in vehicle ensures the part functions as expected in a dynamic vehicle environment during driving conditions. 3, this is important. You have to be careful in cases where we do deviate from the OE design. It is only for the improved durability and a longer service life. We make no changes to the part's performance and how it interacts within the vehicle system. We offer over 1,200 components in our EVAP program, and this wide coverage is critical to capitalizing on service opportunities for newer vehicles. Our newly introduced hoses, for example, is a rapidly growing category, and no one comes close to our coverage in this category. To make things simple, here are the EVAP components that you should be keeping an eye on. These are the big movers that you should have on your shelves. These are the top 10 parts from each of our top 3 performing EVAP subcategories. Canister Purge Solenoids, Canister Purge Valves, and Canister Vent Valves and Solenoids. If you look closely, many of these applications cover up to the newer model year vehicles on the road today. This list alone will give you 67% coverage in EVAP. Sales of EVAP components often spike as soon as it gets hot outside. Now is a great time for you to make sure you're ready for the selling season and increase demand of EVAP components for late model vehicles. Here are up-and-comers, parts that we've released in recent years that you should have on your shelves to stay ahead and on top of demand. We have our newly expanded EVAP hoses along with our continued introduction of canister purge components to cover newer vehicles that have either fallen out of warranty or seeing abnormally high failure rates. We've gone over a shopping list, so now let's compare our offering to our competition. The numbers don't lie. BWD leads the aftermarket when it comes to full-line EVAP coverage. BWD offers breadth of coverage, depth of coverage, and we're competitively priced. Here you can see there are some categories where we're not leading in SKUs. Let's look at fuel vapor canisters, for example. Smart coverage matters. Looking at fuel vapor canisters, it takes us about 165 different canisters to cover 90% of sales, and 213 for 95% coverage. The remaining canisters in BWD's 490 plus count contribute towards giving you and your customers the option for a complete EVAP repair. Wells provides over 500 canisters. From our experience, 213 already gives us a majority coverage. Having more than 500 is not really necessary. More doesn't necessarily mean better coverage. We also add value where it makes sense. For example, all of our fuel vapor canisters for Chrysler and Stellantis vehicles already include a new eSIM. Why else should you trust BWD? Well, we continue to command the EVAP space because BWD is also a Tier 1 aftermarket manufacturer. We pay attention to every detail of every part. The eSIMs exclusive to Chrysler and Stellantis vehicles reports if their EVAP system is sealed properly. So it's critical that our BDP14, designed and manufactured at our Greenville facility, matches the OE eSIM exactly, even down to the H-shaped cross-sectional profile of the O-ring, which we also sell as a standalone part, VCS 100. Leak detection pumps are one of the more complex components in the EVAP system, and as the name suggests, they allow the EVAP system to be pressurized for the vehicle to conduct self-tests for leaks. Given their complexity, you shouldn't be surprised to hear that they require expert manufacturing to perform correctly, and our incredible team at Greenville facility has risen to the occasion, designing and manufacturing several of our most popular pumps to match OE specifications and set the aftermarket standard for quality and durability, including the VDP67 shown here. In addition to offering the most complete program, we also offer the smartest product offering. As I showed earlier in our up-and-comers, CP10081 is one of our rising stars. All of these OEGM numbers on the left here use the exact same canister purge pump. The only difference are the brackets used for it to be attached to different vehicles. Our CP10081 is a direct replacement for all these OE numbers, allowing it to cover millions of popular GM vehicles with just one BWD part number. I've mentioned full line coverage earlier, but what does that mean? It means BWD offers everything needed for a complete EVAP repair. The 2019 1500 with the 5.7 liter Hemi and standard fuel tank shown here is our most recent example where we have a BWD part for every part in the vehicle's EVAP system. We also offer options for multiple configurations of this vehicle, such as the Pentastart 3.6 liter and extended fuel capacity models. To provide our customers with additional value, we also offer 22 Canister Purge Solenoids under BWD, covering about 67 million vehicles on the road today. We provide the breadth of coverage that our competition does not. Another big benefit of our program is that almost 80% of our EVAP components are actually manufactured in North America. This helps ensure quality in our parts and a more stable supply chain. Most of our competitors, on the other hand, are sourcing components entirely from China and other low-cost countries. We also offer complete programs in other popular emissions categories, like crankcase ventilation with 530 SKUs, EGR with 680 SKUs, and diesel emissions with 100 SKUs. Here we've broken down each of these categories to show some of the subcategory parts that we offer. We find that our customers will buy what part professionals recommend, and we want to make sure you are all aware of all the testing and validation that goes into qualifying our parts for production launch. We perform lifecycle and end-of-line testing along with extreme and accelerated testing similar to what OEMs do, including wear, thermal cycling, thermal shock, salt fog, vibration testing, and more. Lastly, we also perform dynamic in-vehicle testing at our test center in Texas to ensure our products behave as expected in different driving conditions and loads. The end result is our quality parts that meet fit, form, function, and regulatory requirements with the added bonus of enhanced durability. With that, I'll hand things over back to Aaron from marketing.
Great. Yeah, Ed, thank you. Thank you very much. So there are multiple different pieces that have been created to help you when you're in the field, visiting shops, or even working with some of your colleagues, if they're new, getting them up to speed. We have a 6-page brochure that details the entire offering within our EVAP program. Additionally, we've recently created a new part spotlight that features some of the newer numbers that are starting to see some stronger sales growth. We've done a dedicated flyer to the new canister purge pump that fits all these GM vehicles. It's a part that's growing in popularity, so we know it makes sense to let shops know that it's available. And then we have a more detailed 8-page brochure that outlines the entire emission control program that BWD offers. We also know that there's a place for digital support. So we have multiple channels or multiple EVAP videos on the BWD YouTube page, which has over 500 technical and installation videos. And then the other thing that we create and post to the site at bwdbrand.com are the 20-page-ish digital product portfolios. So if you go to the site and just search emissions, you'll be able to come up with this portfolio. You can download it. It has a lot of good technical information, key insights. So these are really good pieces that are available to you as well. So, lastly, just to wrap everything up, so what's in the box, right? Well, it's a lot of boxes, right? Because we have the industry's best coverage, and this certainly helps you be able to capture additional sales in a growing category. And the parts have been and continue to be extensively tested in the lab for performance and durability, and maybe more importantly, tested on actual vehicles in North America to make sure they integrate correctly with the advanced systems on today's vehicles. Some of the parts do have very specific design improvements to improve durability, and then we continue to create sales support materials and training events such as this to help you be more and more prepared and to continue to be experts in this line. So, yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope you folks have a great day.